Ladies and gentlemen, we are back with Season 1, Episode 8, Redemption. Before we go any further, I saw 2 subs when I was off camera. Thank you, Walker, very much for the sub. And thank you, Crimson Leopard, for the sub, even though you're almost assuredly not there anymore. If you happen to see this somehow, I do appreciate it. Thank you. You also may or may not know this, but you can put that towards increasing interest in a future stream. So if you want to put that towards up to 3 future streams, just let me know. So, this episode is very strange. I guess the whole show has been. I found out recently, obviously this kind of hit the ground running in terms of popularity, and a lot of people were very, very much into it. But what's doubly interesting is how much they were like, okay, we're going to go ahead and give you a second season, but we're going to give you about a year to make it. Actually, less than a year. In fact, let's actually think about that. That would have been about 9 months of production time to get started on Season 2. Yeah, I haven't watched Season 2. You know, I'm not getting into Season 2 yet. It's just, obviously, Season 1 hit the ground running, and a lot of people liked it, just like Force Awakens, and for basically the same reasons. And as I've been pointing out, as has been mentioned several times, this is a good show, so it makes sense that people would gravitate towards it. What does not... No, they did. What does not make sense is everything else. I want to talk very, very briefly about something. Some of you may or may not know that there's this thing they usually refer to as the volume, which is a usage of a new form of technology called stagecraft. I've been following stagecraft off and on for the better part of the last 4 years, 5 years now? God. Because it's been a fascinating development of green screen technology. See, the idea of stagecraft is that you throw up some LEDs in the background, and those LEDs then have a live footage which is being thrown up to them. And that live, actually I have Hazardous, but thank you for the link. That live LED that's out there is controlled by Unreal. So that's an engine that's a scene that someone built in Unreal Engine, in the latest thing of Unreal Engine. If you remember, this is something we all knew. In fact, they had a whole thing about this during one of the E3s in the last years. Remember the one with Keanu Reeves and Carrie-Anne Moss? And they had a whole shtick where they were showing off what you could do with the Unreal Engine. This is one of the things you can do with the Unreal Engine. Now, there are some consequences and difficulties of that. It's very, very dependent on camera angle. You have to make sure you're always cognizant of where the camera is and keeping that synced up with the shot of the background. It does have some visible video gamey clips and load times and frame rate stutters. I'm sure if you're paying careful attention to this show, you yourself noticed on several shots where you could see the background blip just for like 1 frame off of itself before getting back into place. Little stuff like that, because that is an engine render that's being run in the background on a colossal resolution. So that makes sense, right? But the benefits of it are tremendous. And the 3 biggest benefits that especially benefit this show, the first show to really use this technology to any particular degree, first of all, is light, reflections, and spill. So the lighting is obvious. The LEDs are LEDs. They're actually showing the actual light and energy that's coming off of them. So if you switch it to a light, a nice big red sunset thing, or if you switch it to a coal blue area or whatever, oh, I know, poses. No, that sounds so cool. Then the light that's being cast from the LEDs is going to help add lighting to it. This also ties into reflections. If I've got glasses on, or if you've got like reflective chrome armor like the Mandalorian has, those reflections are actually reflections. You're literally seeing the LED screen reflected in that thing, so it kind of naturally creates that sort of extra little layer of believability, which otherwise wouldn't be there. And the spill is the big thing. Anybody familiar with green screen knows the problem of spill. I know the problem with spill, because I used to, if you remember, I used to have a green screen setup, and I used to throw myself up against some backgrounds that I put together for that. And green screen spill is the bane of anybody's existence, and years and years and years of technology and techniques have been used to try and get rid of spill as much as possible. But the problem is, the best way to get rid of spill by far is to have less lighting, and less lighting means worse camera quality. On the off chance you don't know what that means, let's say I've got a giant green screen behind us. Well, that green screen has lots and lots of lighting pushing onto it, which means there is now green or blue on me. Like there's literally green or blue light that is being reflected from that onto me, and that's your spill, and that's going to cause issues, and it always does. There's no spill when it comes to this because there's nothing to spill. In fact, it has actually turned a negative into a positive. Now, like I said, there's a lot of downsides to this. One of the biggest downsides is they have to spend a tremendous amount of time and effort actually making those backgrounds. Someone has to sit down in Unreal and generate and design those backgrounds. Now, there is a lot of AI usage going on here because when they're doing something like, for example, pushing out like a terrain, right? You've got a shot against a big terrain. What they do is they throw a procedural generation to just kind of generate a whole swath of terrain, and then they usually go back over it and say, okay, now let's put this and add some things here and go this. And that's normal. Video game developers have been doing that for years. So it is still cheaper and it is still quicker than actually going on location or doing a set design. It is also cheaper than doing post-processing with regards to editing this kind of thing in after the fact. So it is cheaper and better than all other alternatives. It's just, some people have been treating it as if it's some magic thing. You just, boom, and then you're there. No, someone still has to design and think about what's going on in that background. Because again, camera angle is also very, very important, as well as the type of lighting it's going to be showing off and all kinds of fun stuff like that. If you get really involved with that, for anybody who's worked with Unreal, you know that you can actually do all kinds of stuff with regards to things like the weather or moving objects, and you can literally update things on the fly because that's how Unreal works. Like, that's just Unreal in general for game design, regardless of using it for stagecraft. It is still absolutely still in its infancy. And, you know, it's still doing its own thing, and they're still trying to develop it, and they've gotten better at it over the years. Remember, this is the first major production that ever used stagecraft. Stagecraft was in the theoretical and minute concept. It was the kind of thing that they were testing in a lab prior to The Mandalorian, which is the first time they actually used this for a major show. It's also, it's gotten much bigger since then. They've filmed movies. There was one movie that caught my eye that I actually didn't know used stagecraft. Give me one moment, because I was just looking at it the other day. No. Stagecraft. Here we go. That was it. The Batman in 2022. I was really confused by that one, but it makes a serious sense. And obviously, a lot of Marvel films have been using it as well. Thor, Love and Thunder, Ant-Man and Wasp, and Quantumania, and the Marvels all used it as well. So this is the first time that they actually started delving into it into other directions. They've also been using it a lot for shows, and that makes sense because the biggest benefit, really, the biggest benefit of stagecraft by a huge margin is how much cheaper it is. And I know that sounds like a weird thing, but what this does is this allows you to do more than you could do before at a cheaper cost, which lowers barrier to entry, which means you can show off more sets and more locations on your sets, and you're more likely to actually get your shows happening. And in an era where capitalism's getting worse, I'm going to say that as bluntly as I possibly can, it's really important to go ahead and try to lower costs of shows like this, because we wouldn't get shows like The Mandalorian if not for the existence of something like stagecraft. Like, I'm sorry, there was no way in hell that The Mandalorian was getting made if not for stagecraft. It just would have been far, far too expensive, probably on the lines of something like Andor, which, remember, barely used stagecraft. Anyways, I just wanted to talk about that briefly because we haven't really brought it up yet, and this is kind of the big one here. So, the Moff just touched down. I love the cold open. The Moff touchdown. Andor is better looking because they actually built sets for it. I'm sorry, we just talked about this with regards to Baby Yoda, right? A physical prop is always going to be better than a digital one, 100% of the time. You can make a digital prop look very, 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 very good, but there's always going to be something to be said for actually picking up a book and flipping it open like that, right? Like, there's so many details here in how this book is operating. Like, even to the fact that the back cover is only barely holding on by a thread, so even just picking up the book means it's shifting. Did you even see that a little bit there? Just shifting a little bit as I'm picking it up. Anyways, getting back to the point. The Moff just touched down. He's already killed some local troopers, because these guys like to lay down the law when they first arrive in town. Yeah, he just killed a dozen of his own troopers to make a point. Do you really get that point? Do you get that point? I just want to look at... No, I have not had this. I just want to look at the thing. Come on. You just want to listen, I just, come on. And then they're just bored. Pulls out the blaster and aims at the thing. And you just feel like, oh, he's going to shoot the thing. No, he misses. And then he misses, and then he misses, and then he misses. Then it cuts to the other guy. Let me show you how it's done. And then he misses. And misses. And misses. And both of them are just... hang on, this is ridiculous. Hey, can we bring in the pilot? No, hang on, he just killed an officer for interrupting him, so this might take a while. Oh my god. I love this intro, but honestly, this is straight up parody. It is. This is the kind of thing that would be in Family Guy, or something similar. And yeah, they keep punching the child, because you got to make sure to remember that these are the bad guys, so that when IG shows up, snaps one guy's wrist like a twig, and then beats the other guy's face in so hard it actually dents the bike, that you're still in favor of that. And yeah, I was going to talk about this later, but this is extremely important to know. Gideon is like, I am so powerful and I have so much strength. He's so typical of the Warlords of the Warlord era, though, isn't he? I know this is AU and not EU, and the Warlords era is very different between the two. Like it's where the two timelines really diverge hard. But he is such a typical Warlord. He has what he wants. It's right there. If he could stop being an evil dickhead for 5 seconds, he would have his prize and he could go home. But instead, he's already killed several of his own troopers and then killed his own officer for interrupting him. And he's just engineered this yeah, he's very stupid Sith, and it's like, dude, quit it. Quit. Oh my god. He also likes to make power plays. He sets up an E-web. I do like that one E-web is a terrifying threat, because it probably should be. That is an emplacement repeater, which has actually got its own feed box. In fact, in the EU, the E-web is actually a multi-unit device. I'm saying that wrong, but what I mean by that is you need more than one person to operate that gun. What? Hold on. What is Gideon playing at here? Why does he take so long? Like... He has to name drop Kara and Grief. Oh, and Jaren. Din Djarin. Okay. So, you know, haha, I have so much knowledge about you. Wahaha. Excuse me. We also found out he was an ISB officer during the Purge, which helps to explain. I bet you this guy was an enforcement, by the way. But yeah, he's just showboating. He's just working out like, yeah, There's actually this really smooth thing. Yeah, Kara's apparently from Alderaan. That explains a lot, doesn't it? Just slid under the rug there. There's also another thing slid under the rug where the Mando, I'm going to keep calling him Mando, flat out says that, no, he learned about my name from the Purge. And the way he says it is so smooth that at first the structure of the sentence sounds like it's a plot hole. But actually when you sit and process what he's saying, you realize that that means that Gideon was part of the ISB during the Purge, which they still haven't given us the full details of, and they still don't need to. Yeah. And then, I'm sorry, I absolutely cannot believe how quickly and efficiently an IG unit that's been in 2 episodes has become my favorite character in this show. I am not exaggerating. Like, in addition to obviously being amusing, he's just... He's efficient, and he's appropriate, and he walks right in. Oh, hello. Where did you come from? Snot, you think you can get away from me? You can fly. There's no good get flies down here. One moment, please. Oh, yeah, I also noticed he specifically calls it the Night of 1,000 Tears. We don't really need too many details about that one, do we? But yeah, he's efficient. He's got that wonderful rotating thing. His obviously Taika Waititi is doing a great job with the voice acting. But I also love, like, what is your function? To nurse and protect. And he's just doing these really, really, really good shots while zooming by on a speeder. In fact, we show just exactly how precise of a shot he is. Not just because he is shooting people while on a speeder, which is already its own thing, But he runs by 2 stormtroopers, kills both of them, and leaves the Jawa they were talking to completely untouched. And of course, Baby Yoda's enjoying this, I'm sure. Baby Yoda is always enjoying it when stormtroopers get killed. So they're getting ready to try and deal with this whole situation. Grief actually takes a shot for courage. I noticed that little quiet tidbit there. I also love how IG... The rotating nature of IG has always been one of his best features, and one of the reasons why the IG series is so terrifying. So, the IG's torso rotating around to protect Grogu, Baby Yoda, with his own torso was a nice little touch. Oh yeah, a speeder going full tilt, by the way. And just comes in and absolutely is destroying these things. There's also a little tidbit where, we've already seen this, but Kara wields a heavy repeater. Basically a chain gun. By herself. A nice way to emphasize how strong this woman is. Video games aside, usually one person can't do that. I do find it funny, however, I was in the middle of typing that note on my notes, and then as I was typing that, Mando pulls the E-web off of its casing and turns around and just starts shooting at people, and it's just like, what? I'm gonna let that slide. Did you notice that they're pulling the same trick with the stormtroopers that they did with the droids back in Clone Wars? So you've got the basic B1s, or the stormtroopers, who are a joke. They're just a joke, that's all they are. But then you've got to have something that's actually a threat, so we escalate a little bit. So with the droids, we had the super droids, which was the next ones. But here we have the black armored stormtroopers. I'm not sure if they're death troopers, or if they're anything else. I don't know, they didn't even name them. They just said, you know, they just showed them, and they showed them as being more competent and capable. Okay, cool. I imagine we'll have another escalation, because you remember that's what happened with droids as well. Once we managed to the point where we could do a supers on a regular basis, we had another tier of droid above them. Anyways, they could be dark troopers. I don't know. There was actually quite a few variants of those back in the EU, so I have no idea where this is on. But I don't know near as this. They might have forgotten about that. There's this wonderful line IG just has. He says it so plainly. If you go near this child, I will have no choice but to kill you. So. Then we have a scene which is probably simultaneously the worst and best scene of the episode, because they all act like, oh my god, he's been so injured, he's going to die. No, they're gonna kill off Mando. I believe you. I mean, bullcrap, right? Got me thinking, though. That would have been an interesting way to go. Wouldn't have. I actually didn't catch what the symbol meant, Hasbus. So no, I don't know who rescued him. Yeah, they're totally gonna kill off the main character. Oh, yeah, totally. That's happening. Nod, nod. Death Watch. I mean, they were in their royal blues, so that makes sense. And this is before Maul, or hypothetically before Maul. Yeah, exactly, Jesse's Mask. You already see where I'm going with this. Think about the construction of this scene. There's this little tidbit where Grief is like, what? What are you talking about? You're a Mandalorian. And it is Kara who has to say, Mandalore is not a race. And it is Mando who then says, it's a creed. We then see how the flashback, which is the longest and most boring of all the flashbacks we've seen so far, because even though they show a whole lot of new footage, nothing new is actually shown. I'm just going to skip over that for a moment. Then, he gets brutally injured in this attack to the point where he is suffering brain damage. And he tells them to go without me and take the thing. It would have been interesting if Jaren actually dies here. And we follow the next Mandalorian in the next season or the next episode after this. You get the overall idea? It follows through naturally on the scene that happened immediately prior to it. That the people of the Mandalorian can always adopt in new people, which can always lead to more people, and you get it. I mean, that's the very concept of what a foundling is, right? So that would have been an interesting direction to take in it, I think. Obviously they didn't. But it struck me. He looks so normal, as he should. Interestingly, he doesn't do a lot of facial acting in like the 30 seconds he's got his face there. Probably because he's literally having brain damage. So, I'm not with this. But what and yeah, there's some clunky dialogue, and you get the direction we're going with. But there is one thing I like a great deal. Oh, I have no idea, Lynn. I've never heard the word foundling before, so... there's a great deal of good I like about this scene. It's just, once again, if it had a polishing pass, I think this would have popped. Think about this. So the Mandalorian's here. Yeah, no kidding, there's this. Mandalorian's here. The IG unit has been returned. His family was taken away from him by the droids during the Clone Wars. And he needs to save the child, his new foundling. Passing the torch kind of a thing. But then the droid, or Kara, or somebody, recognizes what's going on, and everyone leaves except for the droid. Then the droid can treat him, and he can get up and follow with them. Now, you're probably thinking, isn't that what happens? No. What happens is about 5 solid minutes of a fake-out death, and then the droid does, and then everything I said just happens. The droid takes off his helmet, heals him, and carries him forward. I'm not even complaining about the actual nature of the magic healing, because this is freaking Star Wars. Bacta is basically straight up magic. So I'm not really complaining about that. I just think that with a little bit of a polishing, instead of this being the big fake out death, this could have been the big moment that it was trying to be. The Mandalorian has to take off his helmet for a droid, who then saves his life. That has tremendous power to it right there. And they've even built that up across the whole show to this point. Yeah, this one exception, this one tidbit. There's even a line. There's even this line where the droid says, "Don't worry, I'm not alive." Which is, of course, interesting and also arguably false. But he accepts it. Yeah, no, it's like Vision picking up the hammer in Avengers, exactly. This could have been a moment, and instead it was just, I was just waiting for them to get on with it. And what's funny is, they just move on immediately, right? Takes off the helmet, puts the Bacta spray on, everything's cool. And then cut to them in the thing, and they all look behind, and they're all like, relieved, yay, he's alive! Like, what? Seconds later, it's such a strange sequence. It really feels like they originally were going to do something else with this and change their minds, which wouldn't surprise me. If you followed the creation of the show at all, you'll know that they've been playing it very, very loose with regards to planning for the future. And there's been a lot of literal on-the-set script changes that have been happening throughout the course of this show. By the way, as an aside, I do need to mention, if you're interested in more of the behind-the-scenes in the show, there's an entire series of behind-the-scenes stuff that Jon Favreau put out, along with several other people. So, there's a lot of cool, interesting stuff here. I've been going out of my way to not watch ahead, because I'm still unspoiled on basically everything. In fact, at this point, there's nothing that's unspoiled for me. Or, sorry, there's nothing that is spoiled for me from this point onwards. So I'm just kind of like, okay, yeah, watching it as we go. You get it. So the armor smith is the only survivor, because she's a total badass, and salvaging the armor. One very, very minor detail that I'm actually very enjoyed, that I enjoy very much, is that the forge she uses to smelt the Beskar is this extremely white-hot jet flames, right? With just a hint of blue. It gets across at a glance exactly how ludicrously hot that forge probably is. There's a bunch of other questions I have about how that forge is even physically possible, but at the very least, the quick and dirty exposition there is, yeah, this is some hot stuff. It does blade to fall. I need to polish myself. This is also the very, 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 very first time we name drop something. Jedi. And let's say it once. But she mentions how they had an enemy back in the day, the Jedi. I find it interesting the Jedi are remembered as an enemy of the Mandalorians. That's some history right there. It also makes me wonder where she heard that word from and in what context. Because the Jedi and the Mandalorians certainly do have a lot of history together, don't they? Anyways. I also love how the armorsmith lady is just, well, for lack of a better way to put it, very, very blunt about all of this. Mando himself even has a line I wrote down here. I'm sorry. You expect me to search the galaxy for the home of this creature and deliver it to a race of enemy sorcerers? And yeah, I know, there's different tribes of Mandalorians. Again, Mandalorian is not a race, it's a creed. It's just interesting. So, this is the way. Sure, okay, cool. Another nice callback, he earns his signet. Mudhorn, clan of 2. That's a nice tidbit. So we finally get, I think this has been shared before, but we get a name for the jetpack, the Rising Phoenix. There's also a scene where the armorsmith gets to kick some ass for a minute, which is very enjoyable, or would be if the over-editing wasn't there. I'm sorry, I hate to keep poking holes in this, but could you just let me watch the armorsmith beat the snot out of the frickin' stormtroopers with her hammer and tongs? That's all I want. Please? Exactly, Lynn and Ruth. We're going to get shawarma today, but I don't like shawarma. This is the way. It's awesome how she dismantles these guys. I just wish I could actually see it. I'm sorry to keep complaining about it, but the over-editing for the fight scenes is really frustrating in the show. The Perch has an accuracy buff. I love it. I do want to mention there's a shot that also should have worked and doesn't. There's a bit where they do a slow-mo shot of the hammer going across one of the stormtroopers' chins and just completely smashes a huge chunk out of the helmet, which, again, would have a lot of impact if that was actually armor, which it isn't, because as we all know, the stormtroopers don't even have plasteel on. They have plastic. They don't have armor. Anyway, so we go to the lava room. I'm sorry. They have an underground lava river in this freaking town. Yeah, it's an environmental suit. That's actually a good way to put it. That's all it is. I rather... Oh, God, yeah, they would be boiling in there. I rather like the modified astromech fairy droid. That was a nice touch. Yeah, I'm with you, Magister. Yeah, no, it implies that this is how they power the town. Legitimately. If you remember, they actually have showed several times that this is an area, a region that has plenty of volcanic activity. Thermal power is a very legitimate power source. So it makes a lot of sense that this would be how they probably keep the town under operations. I'm with all of that. What I'm not with is just walking into that room. They probably should have all immediately suffocated from the toxic fumes pouring through it. Never mind the heat, but I'm going to ignore all of that. Everyone knows that lava doesn't have any thermodynamics in fiction. Like, if you're in the lava, it's death. But as long as you're not touching the lava, you're fine. That's true in, like, everything. That's true in video games, that's true in shows, that's true in movies, that's true in books. Lava is like... I mean, you've played Don't Touch the Lava, right? I'm not even gonna touch it. It's just, yeah, okay, whatever. Yeah, exactly. 040. Again, I'm just gonna let it go. Floor is lava. Cool. Moving on. There's this tidbit where they're trying to figure out how... Yeah, no kidding, Bionic. They're trying to figure out how to deal with the upcoming Stormtrooper trap. I have a legitimate question. Because I didn't buy for a second that this was a terrifying trap that they had no possibility of escaping. And I want to know if anybody else had that same vibe. Real talk. It's insane, hazardous. Because, like, sure, they've got, like, the angle, and they've got, like, maybe a dozen troops surrounding the exit hole, but, like, that's it? That's all they've got? Like, yeah, it feels like this sacrifice was there for the sake of drama, as opposed to actually being the kind of thing they could try to think the way out. Yeah, first of all, Mando has the rope, and he happens to have a freaking jetpack now. He could have bust out of there before they have a chance to even start firing. As they're turning to go shoot at their new target, guess who's coming out of the river now, right? And that's just one idea immediately off the top of my head. You cannot tell me that this is a no-win scenario. But, of course, let's be honest with ourselves. The IG unit was probably really expensive. No, think about it for a second. Think about what's required to get that IG unit, like the physical model, on the set for the actress to interact with. Like, have you seen that thing? Because that thing does not look very easy to manipulate or handle. So, yeah, no. The sacrifice was there for the checkmark and to remove the expensive prop from the show. Could have been a guy in a mocap suit, but that's post, isn't it? That's a whole bunch of additional post-processing work you've done every time that person is on screen. It was in character, but I still don't like it. I'm still going to ding it. Negative to story. Because it is fake drama. It's being played up for the sake of the fake drama. Having said that, the IG unit going out, notice they don't shoot on them on site, by the way. The IG unit going out and blowing up on their faces was a good moment. I'm not going to deny that. However, we did just lose the best character on the show. But then there's a TIE fighter. Okay, what do we do about the TIE fighter? Okay, come on, baby. Come on, baby. Do the magic hand thing. Do the magic hand thing. Can I just say, Carl Weathers' character, Grief, is just kind of a weirdly enjoyable character in this. He's not at the level like IG, but I enjoy him more than I probably should. And yeah, notice that the final boss of Season 1 is a freaking TIE fighter. One TIE fighter. Not a classic TIE IN, or LN, or whatever the actual designation is. Just some kind of mod version, but still. Anyways, so. One of the things that I've had issues with this whole season so far is periodically they've been like, hey, we got this new toy, we need to show it off. And then they do it in a way that's kind of weird. In a way that doesn't really work for me. This is an exception to that. The way that Mando gets on board the TIE 100% works for me. And also, once again, helps to emphasize how he could have taken out the ambush earlier, but let's just move past that. Waits until he's nearby, jetpack right up, flip around, and grapple. That was a good moment. No questions on that. Gets on the TIE, smacks the explosive on it. They've totally killed off Moff Gideon. Wink. TIE goes down. And then, I'm going to pause here, because while I have had a couple of niggles, this has been a really solid episode up until this exact point in time. And then it felt like they didn't know how to end it. Did you catch that? Like, they did it. They beat the bad guys. They got away scot-clean. And you could just... Yeah, no kidding, has this. And you could just kind of feel like they weren't sure how to do an outro here. Or they were really, really, really rushed. Because, like, Carl Weathers shows up and is like, yeah, everything's great forever. This is fantastic. What? And she's going to stay with. Yep, and it's going to be cool. Yep, you're welcome back here. What? And then Baby Yoda's like, hi, I'm cute. Okay, and then they leave. What? It was such a weird scene, and it was probably the most obvious green screen scene that it's been in the whole show so far. I hate to say that way, because obviously it's the volume, right? It's not the green screen. But it's probably the most obvious thing where they just walk onto the volume set and then stand in front of the LED. That is, because they've been doing really good tricks with both practical effects and with camera usage in order to hide it the whole show. And here it's just, okay, walk into this circle, which is where you are in real life. Yeah, stand here and look happy. Yeah, we did it. Huh? Then we have an extremely brief burial scene for Kuiil. Speaking of which, asked for Kuiil and for IG-11. Rest in peace, old man. Yeah, I'm surprised they didn't do the more or less literal walking off into the sunset thing. Instead, they have this weird, like, hey, we did it. Episode 1 thing, right? Like the Phantom Menace thing. It's just awkward. Which leads me to the final thing. And this is definitely a complaint. I'm sorry, but the MCU has sort of ruined this sort of thing. Because you could tell this was made in the Disney era of filmmaking. I'm going to call it that, because that's functionally what it is. The Jawas are swarming all over the thing in 2 minutes. That makes sense. Of course they are. They probably saw that explosion like, beeline, let's go. Chugga, 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 chugga. That makes perfect sense. But this is the classic MCU post-credit stinger. It is. You've got the villain who is still alive, or you got something that kind of changes how things have been perceived. He's got something that nobody actually knows what it is, except for people like us. We know what the Darksaber is. And everyone else is now diving for Wikipedia to find out the significance of this. And like 15 dozen websites right now are doing an entire story and article on a page laden with ads saying, what is the significance of Moff Gideon's survival? Or, what is the Darksaber at the end of Mandalorian Season 1? I've seen worse post-credit stingers than this. But the problem is I'm looking at this like... Because the reason they do this... Well, there's actually two, excuse me. The first reason they do this is because they've done this. They do this because of... well, I mean, honestly, because of the MCU. Because of Iron Man 1 and because of the Hulk, the Incredible Hulk. Do you remember that? Now, let's go into history for just a second. Can we do that really quickly? Let's talk about filmmaking history for just a second. The reason they did that at the end of Iron Man 1 and at the end of Incredible Hulk was because they didn't expect those two films to take off. In fact, one of them didn't, if you remember. So they decided to use that as a trick to have the Incredible Hulk and to have Iron Man kind of self-promote each other, to try and strengthen the potential of the same audience members going to see both. And that was something that they were working towards. That's something they wanted. And because it worked, people were like, okay, now let's go ahead and repeat the trick. So at the end of Iron Man 2, there was a thing. And then at the end of Iron Man 3, there was a thing. At the end of Captain America, there was a thing. And at the end of Thor, there was a thing. And all of those were also building to a point. Because the plan, pretty much after Iron Man 1 was a smash success, was building up to the first Avengers film. There was a lot of bumbling on the way. I've actually covered this already in my ruminations, so forgive me for doing the glossed over summary version. But there was a lot of bumbling, but it was all the build up to the Avengers, which then was a colossal blockbuster record-setting smash success. So then they kept doing it. And the catch here is this is the exact moment they should have stopped using this trick, in my opinion, both professionally and from a business managerial perspective. This was the exact moment they should have stopped doing the post-credit stinger. Because think about all the post-credit stingers I just mentioned. All the ones from Iron Man 1 up to, I guess, Captain America, I think, was the last one. All of them do something to build up to Avengers. All of them were dovetailing into the finale. And then the finale hit. Cool, that worked. But then they just started doing references. Sometimes to completely unrelated properties. Sometimes there would be things where they would establish part of a show that was coming up. Sometimes they would tie into a completely different movie. Sometimes they would just give a reference because people like references. And they just kept doing the stinger without thinking about it. It became rote at that point. It became a check mark on a bulletin board that someone somewhere said, hang on, we need to have a post-credit stinger. I've got it. Let's bring in that raccoon. Or not raccoon, sorry. The duck. Let's bring in the duck. Everyone likes the duck, right? I'm not against the idea of the post-credit stinger, and this is not a bad usage of this, because Gideon has survived and he's got the Darksaber. But I still, I admit, I have to admit that I physically cringed just a little bit. Like, physically, I actually cringed a little bit. Just a little bit. Because it was just so MCU. It was so, like, I could feel that someone somewhere in the creative writer's room said, hang on, what are we going to do for our stinger? Not, should we do a stinger, which is the question that should be asked here. What do we do for our stinger? Oh, I've got it. Gideon lives because we can't let go of him. Like, he's a great actor. And, well, we got to have something cool. I've got it, the Darksaber. And some people are like, yeah. And other people were like, what's the Darksaber? Well, you see, it's a Mandalorian artifact that they used to fight Jedi back in the day. Oh, it's a great idea. Okay, let's do it. Cool. Yeah. And I'll admit, the Darksaber even looks cool, and I do admit I am very curious how exactly Gideon got a hold of that thing. But it doesn't really build up to or tie into anything other than the story continues. In continuing the trend, while it's not bad, it isn't good either. Yeah, lots of shows exist without stingers. Speaking of which, Andor. Although, actually, that's not true, isn't it? My God, I actually just realized. Andor did have a stinger. I forgot about that. Although, Andor's stinger was actually very precisely used, now that I say that. I shouldn't spoil it, but all we're going to say is that it was a payoff rather than a dovetail into another work. Like, literally, the benefit of the Andor stinger was, oh yeah, here's what was happening 3 episodes ago. So forgive me for coming down on this moment. 50 negatives! No. So, let's rate this sucker. I'm thinking turbo black. We need a new black. We need an ultra black here. Like an ultraviolet-y black kind of a thing. By the way, per suggestion, and I do like this suggestion, I decided to go ahead and include a little bit of a guide of what the colors roughly mean so that people can stop thinking that yellow is a bad score. Venta black. Oh, God. Right. No, Venta black. I've never seen that in person. Have you, Maverick? Yellow is bad. Oh, I can do that really quick. Well, I mean, the color guide doesn't really matter for the other sheet. I don't think I could quickly and efficiently explain what the score guessing thing is, to be honest with you. I've seen pictures of it, Maverick, but I've never even seen it, like, in motion. Yeah, the guideline's right there I've been keeping track of. So I'm seeing a bunch of people giving a bunch of thoughts. I'm feeling orange, to be honest with you. High orange, but still orange. This is a very good episode. It stumbles only a few times, and it's got some really, really solid stuff going on for it. Like, this is a very good episode. This is some solid television that I was engaged with and enjoyed almost every minute of. It did some good payoff. It did some good setup. I'm with it. I'm completely with it. Whoops. Oh, now we're in Amarang. But as I've been talking about before, and we did this with story arcs back in Clone Wars and in Arcane. Let's talk about the season, the whole season. Obviously, the color gradient there. Oh, by the way, some of you might not be aware, but talking too fast. Some of you might not even be aware of this, but if you scroll down on this Rumination sheet, I have another way that I'm showcasing quality down there, just to kind of show all the shows side by side. So we had 1 green, 3 oranges, 4 yellows so far. And you can see the relative spread down there. Like, if you scroll down, no, below the pies, and you see another chart, which just shows the shows alongside each other. And I really like that chart, because it shows Clone Wars Season 7. That's honestly a fairly typical season of television right there. In all sincerity, like Clone Wars Season 7, you know, we've got 1 blue, right? Got a handful of greens, we got a handful of oranges, we got a couple of reds, and we got a handful of purples. That's a pretty typical season of a good show, right? Like if I was to do this for something like, say, Voyager Season 4, which I'm going through right now for the lore run, that's about what it would be. It would be that kind of a rainbow. The reason I bring that up is that we look at Mandalorian and we see a much more static level of quality. We only had the 1 green. You're kidding, as it is. We only had the 1 green. And then we have much, like a dominating amount of yellows and a fairly strong amount of oranges. And that's the thing that I'm pulling attention to. It's always about how you interpret data. I look at Mandalorian and I see this is a solid Season 1. If I had watched this when this came out, I would have been hooked and wanting more. Like, this is engaging. Nitpicks and irritations aside, this is some damn good stuff. And I'm eager to see where it's going in the future. This is absolutely one of the better first seasons of a show I've seen, especially given they were using brand new technology with limited time, with limited budget, and starting a new streaming service. This is crazy. And yeah, it's Star Wars. Exactly. So yeah, no, that's my final thoughts of the season as a whole. Hell yeah. The fact that we've seen the absolute Hit me, Hazardous. So I would say if you put a gun to my head, I would probably put the whole season as either a yellow or an orange. One of the two. I'm actually not sure about which. Oh yeah, I've actually, I don't have a lot of time to watch the concept art because I have to get live, obviously, Hazardous. But the concept art has been some cool little backgroundy stuff. A purple in Voyager Season 4? Give me a second. I'll tell you right now. So I've got it right here. I ripped my DVDs long ago, so I've got all my Trek stuff on my local hard drive. So let's see. Purple's in Season 4. Well, the problem is I'm only up to Mortal Coil. Like, that's as far as I've gotten. So I'm only halfway through right now. But I probably would put Mortal Coil up there. It does have a fairly major flaw to it, which I never noticed until this time around. It was pointed out to me. There's also some other potential purples. We've got One coming up. Living Witness is coming up. We also have Killing Game coming up, and there's Year of Hell, which needs to be discussed as well. But the other really, really big one, which is almost a flawless episode, is Revulsion. All of that is really solid stuff, red at a minimum, when it comes to Voyager Season 4. Anyways. So what do I think about Mandalorian as a character and a protag? This is going to sound like an insult, but I absolutely do not mean it as one. He's very blank slate. I don't just mean because of the lack of facial acting. There's obviously a lot of characterization on display there. But yeah, he's the man with no name. Exactly, that's exactly what I was going with. He's the man with no name. Have you seen those films, the Dollars Trilogy? Clint Eastwood's character isn't much of a character. He goes through a lot of events, he's well characterized, well animated, he reacts to things well. But there's not much there, you know what I mean? It works very, very well for the show, and he works wonderfully as a vehicle for everything else, right? This is really loud. Hopefully we'll be able to move off the Sand playlist next season, which we're starting immediately, by the way. Now let's go down to here. That works. It's a much quieter song. But yeah, no, he's got the knighthood thing going for him. Very crusader-y kind of a knight, very Teuton order kind of a thing, Teutonic order. And he's got the gunslinger thing going for him. He's an interesting puzzle piece, if not an engaging character. Does that make any kind of sense? I think if someone less talented than Pascal or Favreau was handling this, I think he would be a lot worse of a character. I think it would be very, very easy for someone like Mando to be boring. He's not boring at all. He's, in fact, consistently engaging. It's just that that's kind of the end of the sentence. He is primarily a vehicle for everyone else. I mean, I mentioned something as an aside that some of the best dynamics we've seen is between him and the baby, both of which barely talk. And I don't mean that as a joke. Both of them do a lot with what they have. No, this is 100% a space western. 100%. And I'm down, by the way. In fact, I kind of wish it was a little bit more space western. I feel like, and I'm going to be proven wrong about this, I feel like that season 1 was them going hard because, again, you know, new technology, starting the streaming service, dealing with all of the fallout from the noise after Last Jedi. I feel like they were trying to play to the hits. You know what I mean? As I said before, Mandalorian Season 1 is a pretty safe show. It's a space western with some talented actors doing some solid story arcs, and it's got cuteness, and it's got fighting the Empire, and it's got stormtroopers, and it's got a TIE fighter. It does a lot right, but it's also a very safe show. The reason I'm leading with this is because it feels like Season 2 would be the perfect time to actually try and try stuff out, right? Get a little bit more experimental. Drift into different directions and try out some new things. I mentioned that because I know Season 3 doesn't do that. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, I shouldn't talk about... I mentioned how I'm not spoiled by this point. I should clarify that sentence. I know nothing about Season 2. Nothing at all. I am aware of several things about Season 3. Because Season 3 is just... I feel like I fundamentally disagree with their approach to Season 3, and I think that's the simplest way I could put that. Like, whether it's good or bad is not part of the discussion. It's just they're doing a lot of things with Season 3 structurally. They're using Season 3 as a vehicle for a lot of other things. And, yeah. Anyways, let's walk away from that for a second. But anyway, yeah. We are not covering Season 3. No, nobody paid for it. We are covering Season 2 in a bit. It's not quite lunchtime. What kind of new things would I like to see in Season 2? God, I don't know. Like, it would be nice to push away from the Force a little bit more. It would be nice to not have to fight the Galactic Empire again. It would be kind of nice to drift into... Like, we didn't really get a slice of life kind of a thing going on, which Star Wars almost never does. I don't know. I feel like there's a lot of things they could do in a lot of different directions, televised wise. They could do an entire episode set entirely in a different time frame, you know, stuff like, what do I expect? Well, Moff Gideon's going to be back, and the Galactic Empire, the Imperial Remnant, the First Order, the Last Order, is going to be trying to hunt down Baby Yoda for evil. And the Mandalorians are going to be like, I will stay one step ahead of you, but then I must give you up because I love you. But no, actually, Baby Yoda will stay with him because we can't get rid of our merchandising material. And I expect that we'll find out more about the Great Purge. And I guess that's it. That's all I expect at the moment. I'm not breaking for lunch yet. Let's go and cover Season 2, Episode 1, then we'll break for lunch. So I'll see you in about half an hour, or 40 minutes, or 50 minutes. How long is it? Let's actually double check that. Before I give you a time. Come on. There we go. Season 2, Episode 1, and this is going to be... Oh, this is a long one. It's going to be about 50 minutes for this one, so this is going to be a long one, so I'll see you in about an hour.